Good afternoon. This is Paul Glumaz with the LaRouche Political Action Committee, with the Schiller Institute, and in Canada, I'm with the Society for the New Humanist Paradigm. This is being brought to you by General Welfare Presents, and today is the 12th of August. Of July. Sorry about that. I'm a little ahead of myself there. In this segment, I'm going to discuss the issue, first and foremost, surrounding the meeting that took place between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin last Friday. Okay. And the reactions and responses to the meeting. And then I'm going to go through the significance of the meeting and the reaction and responses to the meeting. And then I'm going to go through how Donald Trump is now is being put to the test to see where things stand by Putin. And so bear with me. Okay. Now, the meeting was supposed to take only about 40 minutes. That was the scheduled time for the meeting. The meeting actually took 2 hours and 20 minutes. Probably it was 2.5 times more time was spent in the meeting. This also impacted the meeting that Putin was going to have with the with the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. But what happened is, what you have to understand is that everyone in these institutions of power in Europe and everyone in the institutions of power in the United States, the media, the deep state, the equivalent in Great Britain, the equivalent in the European Union. And this gets at the core of are totally concerned about this meeting. Everything that's been going on from the time that Trump won the election, this entire Russia thing being directed from the British intelligence through the deep state of the United States, the intelligence community and the policy layers, and through Wall Street, and through the FBI, the main domestic police dictatorship, police dictatorship agency, has been centered around Russia's involvement, alleged Russia's involvement in the manipulation of the elections. Now, to somebody who's not been following all of this seems very cockeyed. Or they take it on faith that this is indeed what is going on, that Russia didn't intervene and affect the election, because the media is saying this, and who am I to say that I know more than the people that run the media, right? So you get two responses to that. But you have to understand the driving response of this is for a reason. And the reason is the fear that the United States will have a relationship with Russia where the heads of state, the leadership of both nations, have a rational discussion about what is in their mutual interest. Now you have to understand what this means. I'm the United States. You're Russia. What is it that would help my people? How can your nation and my nation act and behave in such a way that it benefits my people as well as your people? It's a very simple issue. Okay. Once that happens, once that is arranged, and the leadership of both nations start to know that they can trust each other in the dialogue, in the discussion. Once this happens, then it becomes very clear that if problems develop, hotspots, terrorism, drug trade, drug trafficking, which is hurting countries, financial crises, all these things. Once these things are happening, there's a discussion that can say, well, what can we do to prevent the effects of this? Or India and Pakistan are threatening to go to war. How can we mutually together deal with that? Or any kind of situation. Once you have an established relationship which is not being sabotaged, then if you add to that, between the United States and Russia, if you add to that the other big thing that's happened is that China and Russia are totally coordinating their policies. So now you have a relationship also emerging between the U.S. and China, primarily on economic issues. So now you have a situation where there's no mediation between Russia and the United States. There's no mediation between the United States and China. There's no external force mediating the relationship, or controlling the relationship, or controlling the perception. The president and those very close to him, and the Russian president and those very close to him, can actually deal with each other directly. Okay. Everything that has been going on about Russia, the whole effort to destroy the president, to try to remove the president, to try to run a coup against the president, is all related to this question. And so when the president had a meeting that went 2.5 times longer than the scheduled meeting, and by all indications, a understanding was beginning to be developed personally between these two men, there was a huge freak out. Okay, you cannot underestimate the freak out that is now occurring. Okay, now you had the liberal Democrats going completely berserk, including the most anti-war liberal Democrats like Barbara Lee of California, who's been the most strident opponent to the Iraq War and to all of the military adventures. She's even going against this. You know, whose side are you on, Mr. President? Are you on Russia's side, or are you on our side? Right? That is the mindset that's now taking over the entire peace-loving, liberal, primarily Democratic community of congressmen and senators who've been the most outspoken opponents to the policies of George Bush and war, whether it was with George Bush and Obama. They're now taking the position of whose side are you on, Russia or the U.S. This is a nuclear war question, right? because we've been on the edge of nuclear war with Russia. So why are all these peace-loving liberals taking a hawkish position with respect to the president and the potential of an actual dialogue with the president of Russia that actually calms the situation down and allows for countries to work together? This is the issue with Nixon. This was the issue with Ronald Reagan. This was the issue with Clinton. And in all those instances, it was sabotaged. It was sabotaged. Things happened to wreck that relationship, that potential relationship. Okay? Things happened. Okay? So now we come to a very interesting response that adumbrates or illuminates the real nature of the situation. None other than the Pope of the Catholic Church, Pope Francis I, comes out and makes the following statement: that the potential alliance of the United States and Russia is the greatest threat to humanity. And the other two alliances that are threatening humanity are China and North Korea, and Russia and Syria. Okay. The threat is that it would harm the poor. So he's saying this is because it will harm the poor and go against the poor and the immigration and the refugee migrants, which is not the case. It is not going to harm the poor. It's going to help the poor. It's going to stabilize the situation. So what is going on with the Pope that he is making this statement? And why is the Pope coming out of the closet and revealing that he considers a Russia, U.S., China arrangement where they actually try to do what's in the interest of themselves, the most dangerous thing? Because the Pope, this Pope, is not an enemy of the European oligarchy. He is an extension of the European oligarchy. And who is the European oligarchy? It's the European aristocracy. And if you think Americans are racist, you are wrong. Compared to a European aristocrat or a European oligarch, Americans are not racist. Even the most racist Southern KKKer cannot hold a candle to the extreme racism of the European aristocracy and the European oligarchy. For them to live in a world where Russia, they've been at war with Russia for centuries. The European aristocracies have been at war with Russia for centuries. For them to see Russia emerge as a powerful nation and China emerge as in a rapid rate of industrial development which extends throughout the globe is an existential threat. And this European aristocracy, which includes the British aristocracy, but it also includes the European aristocracies of Central Europe, Eastern Europe, or what's left of the aristocracies of Eastern Europe and Western Europe. This is the oligarchy. They would rather see a nuclear war wipe out all of humanity. They would rather see a nuclear war wipe out preferably part of humanity. The part of humanity they don't want to see exist. Okay? And this is serious. And it's now coming out in the form of the Pope's statements. Okay? So what has happened to the Catholic Church that the Vicar of Christ the Pope has become an anti-Christian, who has equated Mother Mary, the Virgin Mother Mary, to the earth goddess of Gaia. What has happened to a Pope who views economic and technological progress as the greatest sin that the human race can adopt? What has happened to the Pope? What has happened to the Catholic Church that they have become like this? And my view is there was a divided Catholic Church. However, it was under modern popes, from Leo XIII to Benedict XVI, which is roughly 140 years. But it was corrupted from the inside. The Catholic Church and many of the orders were corrupted, and the Catholic Church went from a mixed bag Catholic Church, but in principle a positive thing, to the Church of pedophilia. And I'm serious about that. And that corruption then opened the door for the Jesuits to take control of the church. And the Jesuits have always been an arm of the European aristocracy. And the Jesuits now run the church. And that means anything goes. Okay? That means anything goes. There is no Christianity if the oligarchically directed Jesuits are running the church. But that's not the real issue that I want to talk about. The real issue I want to talk about is that the Pope saying this indicates how serious this threat is. Okay, so what's going on is that Donald Trump is opening up a process where he is preparing to collaborate with the president of Russia, as he's already begun to collaborate with the president of China. Okay. And this is seen by the European oligarchy as the end of their existence, by the European aristocracy as the end of their existence. And they are the ones who, behind the scenes, in working with the British and the European aristocracy, created the European Union as an attempt to suffocate the national interests of the individual member states of Europe to an imperial formation. Okay, and they had, in support of this, the previous presidents, Barack Obama and the Bush crowd. But now, Trump does not seem to be that interested in propping up the European Union, that is. So now you have a crisis. And the Pope is also calling for Europe to fully eliminate the sovereignty of all the nations of Europe into a federal Europe, so into a one nation, so it can have enough power as a whole, representing to stand up to China, Russia, and the United States. So this is what this was all about. And you have now the attacks on Trump for having a dialogue with Putin is absolutely incredible in the U.S. media. The McCain Republicans, Lindsey Graham Republicans, the liberal Democrats, they're all going berserk. And what also is being exposed, that within the Trump administration there are fifth columners like Nikki Haley at the United Nations who's saying we can never trust Russia. I would say the opposite. When are we going to be able to trust the United States? Okay. Now, in this context, agreements were made at this meeting, or the discussion of agreements be made for a ceasefire in some of the areas of Syria. Now, the ceasefire itself is really not that important. People say, well, you know, they're going to have peace, they're going to have a ceasefire. No. The ceasefire is an agreement between the U.S. and Russia. And what the Russians want to know is, does the President of the United States have the power internally in the United States to make the ceasefire hold? That's the number one thing. Can the ceasefire holding for a while then lead to further cooperation in Syria to, number one, finish off ISIS. Number two, bring those warring parties that are able to be brought into an end to the war. Now, in anticipation of this, the Chinese in Beijing have been meeting with the Syrian representatives, and the plans for rebuilding Syria are being put together, and the Chinese have said they will put up the funds to start the rebuilding of Syria as soon as possible. This is, the war is not concluded, and they're already talking about rebuilding Syria, and China is going to put in a big effort to do that, because that's key to the whole One Belt, One Road. Now, already there's a net inflow of Syrians coming back to the areas that are now being stabilized, and the rebuilding process is actually beginning now, before it is even completed. Now, so this ceasefire is a first step towards seeing if the president has the power to keep the U.S. military or elements under the U.S. military from sabotaging the ceasefire. Now, the U.S. military is not in complete control of the situation, because they're working through wildcard, mercenary, and other armies that we're financing, who are not fully under the control of the United States, even though they may have embedded in them U.S. advisors and U.S. military personnel. So the U.S. is militarily has been in Syria as advisors to these the Free Syrian Army and this so-called our rebels or whatever. And the question is, can this ceasefire hold? And can Trump make it hold? If Trump cannot make the ceasefire hold, and the Syrian, either the U.S. military bombs Syrian army position or whatever, then that means Trump has not consolidated his position in the presidency. It's still unconsolidated. He has not gotten control of the military. He has not gotten control of the tools of state, the military, the foreign policy, and if he's not in control of the military, he's not in control of his own government. And therefore, he does not have the power to carry out things like Glass-Steagall, a single-payer health system, whatever the necessity that the nation needs. He is not in yet consolidated power. And the effort to prevent him from consolidating power and to wreck everything that's going on is being directed from London, from Europe, from inside the deep state. And this isn't going to end until either Trump is removed or destroyed, or the country is destroyed in the financial crisis because Trump has not been able to act efficiently, and because the Democrats will not cooperate with Trump because of the fact that they have lost their minds and they will do anything to destroy Trump, and even believe that they might be able to rescue the country after they destroy Trump. this is the problem with the Democrats right now. They are still under the control of the Obama apparatus. The Obama apparatus is controlling the Democratic Party from the top, but also controlling it in terms of selecting what the issues are. And the media is completely oriented towards this. Now, on the ground, Russia has created, this whole thing has created the expectation in the political layers, especially Democratic political layers, that this thing is real, that there is some kind of evidence, and that eventually Trump will be removed. So there's a heightened sense of excitement around the opposition to Trump, and a lot of people, and the hype around that, and so forth is going on. But increasingly, there's a doubt developing in those layers that they have the means to overthrow Trump, and there's a doubt also developing in those layers that there was any real truth to the allegations. So what's happening inside the Democratic Party is that there is a demoralization taking place, where they're completely going against Trump, but there's a demoralization, a sinking feeling, a feeling that they can't do anything. And this is the time for the Democratic Party, the people in the Democratic Party with any kind of sensibility, to take the party back and drive the party towards a Franklin Delano Roosevelt orientation. And everything else be damned. And if they do that, they will create the basis for Trump to actually implement Glass-Steagall, to actually implement the single payer, to actually deal with the economic collapse that the United States, and the collapse of our infrastructure that's going on. And because there's an ideological, clinical problem with Republicans. A lot of Republicans would join that, but in the Republican Party, you have a lot of ideological insanity, and although they're on some things they're not bad, but you have this problem. So that's where we are, and I hope this has helped give you a sense of the significance of the Putin Trump meeting.